So what do an actor and activist, a water scientist, a filmmaker, and superwoman, activist, journalist, just all around amazing woman, can teach us about love? So first you need a microphone to do that. Please take yours. For the second part of this panel, when we were preparing for it, I did, again, a lot of research to see different angles. And interestingly enough, and Paul and we talked about this, and Esmeralda and Lucas also, we talked about this. We realized that out of all the elements, the soil, the air, water is the great connector when it comes to love. We are within our mother's womb. Every big ritual that we know of, from baptism to all the sacred ritual in Buddhism, they're always coming back to water. And if you really think about it, we also talked about the research of this woman called Vera Austin, who calls water the great connector, because we drink it, we know what we do when we go pee, and then it goes into the systems, and then it comes back, and it keeps coming back as the law of the circle, which is one of the principles of the environmental intelligence that I speak of every day. And the great connector was an important element. So you're kind of like all here, kind of representing water. Maybe we'll start with you, Paul. Can you tell us about what you do, how you do it, and what has been maybe one indication of this great connection, of this great connector that water is? But do that in a kind of for dummies kind of way. We're not scientists.
What?
I said do it in a kind of for dummies kind of way.
Okay. Yeah. That's the brief. I got it. Okay.
You got it.
So, I think we all have a water story, everybody here. Mine began, I grew up next to a body of water. It was my childhood. I spent it building rafts and poling around. We didn't see kayaks, so that was my connection to water as a young person. And I was very moved when I saw it being damaged and polluted, and that was a motivator at 16 to try and do something and change that. I became a water scientist. I had the opportunity to work in Malaysia with the World Wildlife Fund on highland forest projects, looking at the connection between the forest and the water and the water and the forest. Through my work as a scientist, I see solutions everywhere. We have these solutions, but it became apparent that the missing ingredient was people. That was the piece. And I thought if we could tell a story that was hopeful and positive and optimistic, maybe we could get people to connect. So I made a film called Brave Blue World, and that launched on Netflix in 2020, and Matt Damon became involved, and Liam Neeson narrated it, and so it exceeded all of our dreams. But then the question was, what next? So I thought about why make another film? And I thought about all the films that I'd ever seen, documentaries that had changed me, and the one that stood out was My Octopus Teacher, because I won't eat octopus anymore. And that's why it was amazing this morning to hear Ellen Windemuth speaking on the panel. She's a real hero of mine, an inspiration. And the reason that worked was empathy. And I thought, how could you make people fall in love with water? So that was our North Star, the whole way through. How could you make people fall in love with water? And it is very personal, it's intimate. You mentioned this, Nora. We're born in a cocoon of comfort in our mother's wombs. It runs to all our rituals. So we just told that story to try and see if we could reach people, and it does, because it's very personal. When we express our deepest emotions, joy and sadness, it's expressed through water. It's a tear. That's the symbol of the most extremes on either side of the equation. We cry with happiness and we cry with joy. So it's always there if we can just, because people act from love. We don't act out of facts and figures. Thanks.
Thank you. Interestingly, Esmeralda, when we were speaking about love, you are actually working, you have an ongoing project about speaking about water in a very specific context. And how hard has it been for you to speak of something that has been so unloved? Because we talked about the lack of love, and it feels like water has been so unloved. We have forever chemicals in it. Most of the waterways are like what is considered dead water because there's no minerals in it. How are you trying to reclaim its place, and with all the work that you're doing? Because you're an activist in many, many forms, and you work a lot with Indigenous people. That's why you're such an ally of our work, so thank you. But yes, how hard has it been to speak of something that's so endangered? Water is endangered.
Well, it's something really incredible that you just mentioned. Water is life. It's a gift of life. And you just said the truth. We are contaminated. It's full of chemicals. It's full of plastic. And we don't give it love. You mentioned the indigenous people. For indigenous people, water is like the grandmother. It's completely sacred. And they say all the love that we receive from water, we have responsibility. We have to keep it. We have to respect it. And frankly, all the problems we have now, all the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, is because of the way we behave. It's our consumption, it's our way of life, and it's a fundamental human rights, water. Well, for us, it's very easy. We just open a tap and we have the water here. But 2 billion people in the world don't have that facility. And what is happening is always the most vulnerable, indigenous people, but also vulnerable communities in our countries which are affected. I want to give one example. In Latin America, one of the most poor countries in the world is Honduras. 50% of population doesn't have access to clean water. That tells you exactly how it is a human right. So how do we change that? By behavior, by love, by respecting. Your previous panelist talked a lot about mothers, and it's true. The greatest love is given usually by mothers. A friend of mine has an association called Make Mothers Matter, because they give the most love. And I would say the most love is given by Mother Earth. So we have to respect Mother Earth.
Thank you. I'm going to have one question for you, Lucas, but then I'll go back to you too, because there's something I'm trying to crack.
Crack it if you want to.
No, I'll come back to it. We can crack it together.
All right.
Lucas, I wanted you to be in this panel because people may know you for being the actor that you are, but you're also an incredible activist. And actually, while we were preparing, I have to share this. While we were preparing for this panel, we had a call, and he's literally advocating in a protest for supporting a cause, as he's talking to me and protesting at the same time on FaceTime. It was magical. Thank you. But I wanted you to be part of this because a lot of the work that you do is movement of people from places also that don't have water, or they have to move out of the places that they are because they are in water scarcity. And sadly it's a trend that's growing. How do we give love? How can we give love and give water to people when it's not in their spaces, as you mentioned, Esmeralda? How do we give that love?
First of all, thank you so much for everybody to be here and to listen to us and to give us your time and your presence. Well, this story, in a way, your question, leads me somewhere that might be a little bit abstract as an answer, but I will start there. I've recently started working on a documentary about my father and about the question of how he's gotten so sad, how he's gotten so lonely, and how he's gotten so lost. And doing this documentary, I noticed, and maybe you know this from your work, that observing a person and a structure that you believe and that you push your belief system on that it should be wrong and therefore deem yourself to know more might be the wrong way to look at it from the first place. So what I've learned in that moment was that I don't know my father. That for our entire lives together, I've been looking at him through my perspective. So to bring that to your question, I'm not a scientist. I have no such solutions. All I can say is that maybe there is a possibility of observation that I was allowed to have through the camera, which for me was usually being in front of and not behind. The possibility of therefore shutting the fuck up and allowing myself to observe what is really happening instead of immediately judging or knowing.
So taking some distance from your subject.
Taking distance and maybe allowing for the emergence of what is needed to show itself instead of believing that we know in the first place. And working with the emergence of what is needed because it will express itself. And when that expresses itself, maybe we can find ways to work together.
Interestingly enough, that was deep. That was deep. But interestingly enough, you chose to speak of your father, but when we were preparing, I watched which I highly recommend you watch, an interview between you and your mom, which talks about the transgenerational information, and you start crying, but your mom has a gesture that just, I was bawling, because
I'll do it for her. Here it is.
It was but just with that, she calmed you down.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the connection. That's the water thing. It's like we're always connected to where we come from, and it's water. Like water it's what makes most of our body. I mean, you're the scientist. It's the very element that makes us.
Yeah, I mean, if you counted up all the molecules, over 90% by number are water, for sure. We all come from water, we go back to water.
Yeah.
Carl Jung said it was the symbol of the great collective unconsciousness. And when Veda Austin writes about that, she's kind of somewhat tapping into that. And I think that it is consciousness. You sit near a body of water and you feel a sense of peace and calm.
Which we can recommend to the audience to look into Veda Austin's work. She's incredible woman. But I want to go back to that interview with your mom, because you were kind of like dissecting the history of love and the activism of your father, and how it
My
kind
grandfather.
of got, and your grandfather, and how it got embedded into your being, because it's from your mother's lineage.
Yeah, it turns out there's much more to that, and not just my grandfather. Turns out his father and the brothers of his father were already quite revolutionary, and they helped to free Bulgaria from an Ottoman attack, and a lot of craziness that seemingly transcended through the generations of this family. The other one was an anti-monarchist and fled to the UK and founded a news magazine, and
and somehow you're channeling all of it in the creative power of love through your work.
You know, I think the danger of this, though, is that we rely then suddenly on the generations that were there before us, and we allow for their symbols to be something that maybe guides our hearts, and maybe that might be positive. But if we don't have the experiences ourselves to do or to ask or to be in contact with whatever the subject is, then I find this generational continuation a little bit unfair. And I don't mean it as unfair in terms of I want to avoid it, but it is easy to put your name on it instead of doing something yourself. So I think, if anything, then I want to thank my mother for her own self daring to, in a society, she's born in 49 in Austria, so patriarchy and Christianity are like, yeah. And she's been filling all her actions with empathy to the degree of self-harm, which also I think we need to discuss in our societies when it comes to care work. But the empathy must not be attached to the self-harm. I think if anything, then we should find ways to detach the self-harm from the empathy.
I'm going to need a lot of time to process all of this. Thank you.
Sorry.
I want to go back to what I wanted to crack with you, because literally this morning I was having a conversation with a scientist from Greece who's working on a project in the deep seas, and he also works on the theology of science. And what we were trying to work on is how do we make sacred, for indigenous people, water is sacred, you talked about it. How do we re-sacralize or sacralize water beyond the church, where you get, in I guess in the global north, in the Western, mentality, there is a sacred aspect to water, but not in the grand scope of it. So maybe with you, what would you suggest for us to do that?
First of all, there is a saying which says, you cannot love something you don't know, and to know something you have to learn about it. So I think we have to connect much more with the natural world and stop thinking that we are on top of it, because we are nature, we are water, as you say. So again, that's the indigenous way to do it, and see that our model of extraction, of commodifying nature, has put us at the edge. So we have to recognize that also there is a legal personality to all those things, to rivers, to mountains, because they give us so much. So we need that responsibility also. And I think that's the way we have to connect the people. And there is a great indigenous leader called Tom Goldtooth, who always says, and learn to walk with respect on Mother Earth.
Oh, that's the aim. What's your suggestion as a scientist?
Well, as a scientist, I live a lot in the science of the subject, which is fascinating, endlessly fascinating, and it branches across to the quantum physics level at a certain point in time, and you have to keep an open mind. But when I think about, there's the love of water and the sacredness of water, there's also the joy. So love and joy go hand in hand. And one of my favorite scenes from the entire film was we were filming during the Lunar New Year. In all of South Asia, when the monsoon comes, it signals rebirth, regeneration. But it also erupts in this crazy water fight where everyone throws water with wild abandon and joy. And when I saw the joy of adults and children alike just throwing water, I went, that's absolutely wonderful, because that's that joy, and it is love, And I also loved the story here during the Olympics when
the rain in the sand.
Exactly, because people want that to happen. We want to go swim. And when you swim in that water, there's an intimacy to that relationship. At that moment, it's you and the water. So you're rediscovering that intimacy. And once you want that to happen, look at the miracles that happened.
And Lucas, what would you say to make it sacred again in 20 seconds?
20 seconds. The thing is, I was flowing with the water so much right now, I forgot the question. But
If you had to recommend something so that our audience can leave with, what would you do to make water sacred to all of us? What would you suggest? A ritual, a word, a mantra, a way of doing, swimming, I don't know, anything.
all right, okay. 2 different things. Maybe one of them works for you. One, a good friend of mine said to me at New Year's, after he saw me stressed out about life, and my family handed around these little Lucky Charms for the new year. He said, take the fish, man. Be the fish this year. I appreciated that. And I read something yesterday on surrender, which is, only this time, let the butter cut the knife.
Ooh, that's deep. I might have to keep you around a little longer here. Wow. Thank you so much. I think a lot of people here are going to be thinking about that one. Thank you so much. Actually, we're going to talk more about the sand and the water tomorrow in another panel. So thank you so much to you three for helping
Thank
us
you all.
understand the sacrality of water. Thank you so much, Esmeralda, Paul, Lucas.